Which one is better? FML, funding, marketing, location, startups, or an acquisition? I'm here with my awesome friends, Stephen Trutter, Shane Simmons, Stephen of Ideal Practices, Shane of Crimson Media, both fantastic resources and sponsors. And over the next sitcom length show, next 22 to 25 minutes, we're going to share with you which one is better. There's only one answer, so stay tuned for one answer. If you want to learn more about what either of these two amazing human beings do, just text startup to 215-543-6454. But what is your favorite sitcom from the 80s or any time, Stephen Trutter? You could go, you were clicking around and this was on from your childhood. What would you stop and watch?
Stop and watch Seinfeld. I still
Seinfeld?
Stop and watch.
Yeah, I mean,
on
Seinfeld's
Saturday
a
mornings.
given. I want to go older than that. I'm going to go Family Ties. I love Seinfeld, but I'm going to go Family Ties. Alex P. Keaton was a big part of my, 12-year-old youth. How about you?
That? I did watch that the other. Cheers, maybe.
Yeah.
Cheers. I like Cheers too. Yeah, Shane. How
Cheers
about you?
is good. Well, I'd say Seinfeld or just Saved by the Bell count.
Saved by the Bell counts. Yes, that is a tip. That was
Okay.
a great one. Mario, Zach, Paul, the whole crew,
That's
Jesse.
right. Yeah.
Elizabeth
Yeah.
Berkeley. So you guys are here sharing with the Nacho audience. You've been on here before, but let's just kind of start off for a minute orienting our audience as to who you are and what you do. Shane, I'll actually start with you. What do you do in your daily, day-to-day life to help dentists be more successful?
Pretty much just drink a lot of iced coffee and build marketing strategies for dentists is what my typical day looks like. But yeah, I'm the owner of Crimson Media. So we're a full service dental marketing company that works specifically with dental practices, a lot of startups, a lot of acquisitions. And that's kind of the summary.
Bringing in the new patients. How many new patients does a dentist want, Shane? Trick question, infinity new patients is there. Just joking, too many new patients. Just like Dennis PDD said, more money, more problems. More new patients can be a problem either, right? Stephen, orient our audience, what do you do in your daily help dentist life?
My daily help dentist life is I get to lead one of the greatest teams in the industry on guiding young associate dentists to the path of practice ownership through a startup process that works really, really well. And we get to make associate dreams come true through startups.
You're here to tell us practice ownership. The dream is not dead. It's not all just DSO. It's consuming everything like Pac-Man, another show, another game from my childhood. So you guys help dentists realize their dream. You've helped so many dentists and dental nachos, some amazing ones like the awesome Dr. Ashley Dawson realize their dream. So we're going to talk about FML, funding, marketing, locations, startups versus acquisitions, startups or acquisitions. Or if you hang around with some of these dentists, they've done both, right? There's dentists out there that have done both. So let's just go through some real value-based bullet points for our audience and just talk about the difference between marketing a startup dental practice versus buying an existing one. Shane, I'll let you lead us off with that.
Yeah, I mean, startup, it always seems like an intimidating word for people at first, but what I see, what our team sees is opportunity when we see, startup and starting something from scratch. And so what you have the value of doing as a startup is paving your way, showing the type of practice that you want to be known for, from the very get-go. You don't have to try to restructure and rebrand. Right. So from a startup perspective, Paul, what we typically see is you want to actually start your marketing 8 months before opening. And what I mean by that, and Stephen can definitely attest to this too with their clients as well, is you got to start spreading the word and start ground marketing and connecting with those in the community about, hey, this is, our practice. This is what we're going to be doing. This is kind of what we're wanting to be known for, is being that place you can bring your family or whatever the case is, come check us out. And it starts with the ground marketing, but where I think most startups get it wrong when they don't have the proper guidance is they think that, oh, well, it's time to start my ads and, all of these online pieces the day I open. No, like you want to start that at least a month before opening, specifically on social media ads. Run coming soon, ads, blasting that out there. Have a coming soon page with a little timer countdown to the day that
Awareness.
you're opening
I'm
with
going to
a
use an
special
example
VIP
that
list.
all three of us can understand. You wouldn't be on the first tee and say, maybe I should get some golf clubs now, right? You need to make sure you're prepared. So take home nacho tip. My team can put that in the Facebook comments. Also on Instagram is start marketing 8 months before opening. Stephen, you do this daily, and I get some messages in my inbox of my startup is failing to bring in new patients. Is the not marketing this 8 months out oftentimes the reason for the cry inside or cry outside of? You got the startup open, you have your team, you have the equipment, but you're missing that really important part, patients. Have you seen that happen?
Yeah, I think I've seen it happen. And I read about it, a lot, through Facebook forums and just different groups. And I think the part of the challenge, to echo what Shane has said, is timeline, being aware, and also focusing on tactics for marketing. This is about a strategy for marketing, especially if you're going to market a startup. That's my world. Or even if you're marketing in an existing practice, there needs to be an overall strategy, because what most people ask for in Facebook groups and things like that is, what's everybody doing for marketing? Right. That's not, everyone's looking for the trick of like what one person did in one state in order to launch their practice. And what works in Indiana doesn't work in Philadelphia, and depending on what your target audience is and the kinds of patients. So it needs to be less of a focus on what's the trick to getting people through the door versus what is the holistic strategy of what I need to do to drive people in. That's number one. Number two is getting really comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah. Your ground marketing is huge. And so if you're not comfortable about going on and making connections in the community with other business leaders, other business owners, making yourself vulnerable to be able to go out there and also do Facebook groups and Facebook posts or Instagram, and making yourself visible from a ground marketing perspective, you're not going to drive enough patients. And I guess thirdly is to defend what Shane does. A marketing agency is not a strategy for marketing a practice. They're a part of it. And right. Shane knows, like, his team is really great at what they do, but you can't rely on an agency to drive 100% of your patients in. What are you doing to drive patients in yourself? What are you doing to connect within the community? Right. That's where it lies, the huge success stories that we've been able to be a part of.
And I have to, and you guys are thinking about this, what you guys both said made me rethink this, outgoing, extroversion versus introversion. Those have become very polarizing, probably an unfair way. Introverts, sometimes probably get too much, like, it's not a negative thing to be introverted, right? But let's just talk about outgoing versus not wanting to walk around the town. Sounds like, I know the Dr. Ashley Dawson personality. She did a backflip at our boost camp. Now, you don't have to be that, but I'm assuming that having an outgoing personality doing that is a key component to startup success. Have you guys both seen that?
Yeah,
I'd say you can have two different personalities, and you may have to have one. You may have to have the one that's like, hey, I'm a dentist. I may be a little bit more of an introvert, which most dentists are, Paul. I mean, like, your world is in this sphere, and your world lives in millimeters. Marketing isn't measured in millimeters. It's measured in the ton of effort. So it's not about being perfect with marketing. It's about doing marketing. It's about getting out there and creating. So it's not about perfection. And too many people focus on perfection of marketing and what's the perfect post and what's the perfect thing. Right. It's action above perfection. Don't worry about the perfection part. And you could also be a different person. Just turn on a different mode and say, today I'm going to be Facebook dentist. Go do it.
I like that.
I tell all offices, perfectionism leads to paralysis, and paralysis doesn't bring new patients into the door. So, like, to Stephen's point, there's honestly an advantage. I tell people, when you go out there and it doesn't look perfect, it's more authentic. It's more real. It doesn't look like a billboard. And that's actually something that can make you unique and stand out and be more approachable too.
That's right.
One thing I'll add, as the only one who's crazy enough to have gone to dental school here, I don't know if you guys are going to go to dental school later in life. I always tell Rob Montgomery we're going to create Philly Fantasy Camp, like Philly Fantasy Camp. One thing you can do as an associate that's totally 100% for free, now you're paying attention, to help you with your startup or acquisition is pick up your best friend, pick up your phone and take videos with HIPAA consent of your cases, because 30 to 60-second videos of positive patient experiences, because guess what? When you open up a startup, they don't think you really know what you're doing. When you take over a practice for someone, they also don't think you know what you're doing. So videos of things that you have done is key. Now, talk to me for a minute, and if it's just really Shane, but Steve and I are in this world too, tell me about the acquisition marketing, right? Tell me, okay, hey, I did a startup. I have a startup, and now I'm going to do an acquisition. I'm going to buy Dr. Guac's practice. He does $750,000. He was a good dentist. He worked for 30 years. He's going to retire right out of the playbook, New Jersey, 4 operatory practice. Shane, what are some marketing strategies for that acquisition?
There's two types. One is if Dr. Guac was a great dentist in the community and was known for having an excellent reputation, you can build off that. And there's a strategy there, which I'll go into. If Dr. Guac started to sour in the last 2 years and was just kind of grumpy
Spoiled
and
guac.
maybe, spoiled guac the last 2 years, then there's a different type of strategy to kind of clean up that brand. But to start, let's say Dr. Guac was great and fresh all the way through. What you really want to do is build off of that reputation. Even though you may be completely different in your philosophy of treatment, whatever the case is, you need to build off of a solid reputation if they already have it in place. The first thing that we always recommend, super simple. I don't think this is groundbreaking by any means, but if you can get a note or a letter written by the dentist to put that out to the existing patient base via email, that's very important. Simple stuff, but important to let them know they're passing the baton. They put their trust in you to start to build that rapport with his existing base. The second thing that you really need to do is you've got to start getting yourself out there in the community, specifically in these online, Facebook groups and running ads online and social media world as well, because you got to let people know that, hey, I'm carrying on the legacy that Dr. Guac started. Here's some things that I want you to know about us and why we're excited to welcome your family to the practice. So don't feel like, well, maybe we should take it slow here at the beginning and just try to retain as many patients as possible. It's like, yes, you want to do that, but you also need to continue to bring new blood into the practice as well. So then that way you can start to build your own brand and reputation within that acquisition. And you have someone in this group, Paul, that's doing a really good job at that. If I don't think she'll care if I drop her name, but Dr. Tiffany's doing a wonderful job of that in
awesome.
Ohio. And it's a perfect example.
I love that. I'm just going to pause for a minute. We're talking with Shane Simmons of Crimson Media, Stephen Trutter of Ideal Practices about startups versus acquisitions. To learn more with these awesome sponsors, you text startup to 215-543-6454. Now, you guys know this answer, but if no one else can answer, if anyone wants to answer in the chat, which celebrity sports star do I look like? Which celebrity sports star I look like? Put it in the comments. We'll give you a free 3-day pass to see, because you made me think of something, Shane, when you said that. In our town, we have the Pennington Post and the Hopewell Valley News. And if somebody actually did buy my practice with my brother, they should take out an ad in that paper, because some people actually, read it and they would say, hey, we're so proud to take over Paul and Jeff Goodman's legacy, maybe a picture of all of us. Just like maybe this sports star will take out a ad to say goodbye to Houston. And that is the Justin Verlander, my doppelganger. Maybe he's going to have to take out an ad to say goodbye. Can we get him at a Nachos C event? He's going to live closer, Shane and Steven. So maybe we can get him to come to a Nachos C event. So that is the answer, Justin Verlander. Now, let's go to our next topic here. Tell me more about this. Real estate. Why a pretty building and a big sign does not translate into more production. Before you answer, it's very Dennis to drive down a street and say, I want this fancy building and this fancy sign, and this, I want it to say me, Paul Goodman's House of Dentisting. And I know what, Stephen, I actually get that. I get that feeling, but tell us a little bit more about the facts with this, both of you guys.
Well, they play in marketing, and plays a role into this as well. And I think what most people will chase after is, I need visibility. And I think visibility is icing on cake, but we got to have cake first. Right. And what we need in terms of what is the cake we got to build upon is, I know usually it's nachos, but we'll talk cake here for a moment instead of nachos. I always say icing on the cake is the biggest sign that says greatest dentist ever, with a sign with arrows pointing down. It's also with the most visible building. Icing on the cake. The cake is it the right area? Is it the right demographics? Is it the right space? Are the economics fitting everything that you need in order to grow the practice? Then if those other elements are there, cool. But if you're chasing simply visibility and the largest sign, no one's going to be successful simply because of that. And if you think about Starbucks, or you think about McDonald's, so visualize you're driving down the road, you see McDonald's or Starbucks. Where are they located? Typically on the busy street corner, because that's how people consume burgers. That's how they consume their $7 lattes. Yeah. But I've yet to have a client in 18 years of experience said, you know what? I get patients when they're driving by because I have a drive-through dental office and people are just in the mood for a crown. Yeah, it doesn't happen.
The implant is not usually the impulse buy. You're not like, I'm feeling tired at 2 p.m. I need an implant right now.
I need an Invisalign. Cool. Turn right, and I drive around, and they take my impressions, and life is good. So I think the idea of location is because the economics could be hugely different. You can have a street corner location and you could be off the block. And this has happened. I've had clients have done this. We will move a block off or not on the busy street corner. You may save yourself 20 to 30% in real estate costs. Okay.
Right, and
what do you do with 20 to 30% real estate cost savings? You plow it into marketing to get more patients. So you don't have to have the busiest street corner or the largest sign. Now, if you have a rich uncle like Uncle Paul, who says, I'm going to build the biggest sign then take it. But it's not a prerequisite for the location. The demographics and everything need to align, because the other thing we can't do is put your practice on a flatbed truck and move it to the next town over because you chose the wrong town and the wrong location.
Well, rich Uncle Paul, I can afford at least 2 Starbucks for you, Steven, next time you go out. So you can get 2 $7 lattes on that.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of echo that's you can't change location. And I don't think people think about that enough with sometimes either a startup or an acquisition.
Bingo.
Not even related to patients, sometimes related to your life, right? Someone says, this practice 73 minutes away is what I want. I say, what about when you have kids? What about, is this where you want to be? And it doesn't mean don't do this, but I think in the FML world that we're talking about marketing, we're talking about location. That's so key. Shane, I know it's kind of in Steven's wheelhouse with the, building part, but anything you want to add about the pretty building, pretty sign concept?
Yeah, I mean, some of our most successful offices have been in what people would not consider prime, off the busiest street location. I mean, we have an office in Aurora, Colorado. They're in a giant medical building, and it's got like 6 different dental offices in it. They see over 100 new patients a month, and it's because their marketing is done right. Just like Steven said, if you can save money on the real estate side, reinvest that into your marketing, into your team, into building an efficient practice. It doesn't need to be on the corner right next to a Starbucks every time. So just to echo what
you guys are delivering
said.
Awesome value. To learn about these 2 awesome sponsors, and people just text startup to 215. I'm pretty flexible, guys. 215-543-6454. So I fall off my chair here. So we talked about marketing, we talked about location. We're still going to spend a few more minutes on a few other topics here.
Yeah.
Before we get to funding, I don't want to miss that piece of it, but I want to talk about demographics in general. And this kind of cuts across startups, marketing, everything we talk about. But the importance of demographics, I know we could have a 6-hour live on this topic, but if you're just going to deliver some value, Steven, on demographics, people are watching in, listening in, they're going to watch this recording. What's the deal with demographics? Just like a Seinfeld question.
What's the deal with demographics?
Yeah,
the deal with demographics is this: don't chase ratios simply because everyone says the highest ratios equal the best opportunity. You mentioned something really, really profound there, Paul, is you need to understand where you actually want to be. So there's a personal element of saying, is this an area that I actually want to live? Because while people may say, oh, I'll just move to where my practice is, that could be a really lonely existence. And by the way, demographics applies to buying a practice. You need to do the demographical analysis, whether you're doing a startup or an acquisition, to say, is this patient base here? So we need to find demographics with an abundance of the kinds of patients you want to serve on a daily basis. So we need to make sure that that is there as well. Then we need to create a marketing message to attract that abundance, because attracting a mother of 3 who's in her mid 30s is way different than attracting a 64-year-old male. Way different. So demographics plays in with marketing, because we need to find an abundance of the kinds of patients you want in an area you desire, demographics. And then we need to create a marketing message to attract the abundance. So it's, what are we fishing with? We need to figure out what kind of lures we need in order to catch the right kind of fish. And then we tell Shane, here's the kind of fish we need.
And specifically on the startup side there, one of the things that, is worked really well when we've seen with ideal practices startups is they do help them map out who that ideal patient is for them. And you have to know who your ideal patient is before you decide your location. Because if you're wanting to do a lot of, cosmetic dentistry and you're wanting to focus on the 45-year-old, mom who wants to do veneers and all of these things, but you open in, rural Iowa, where that may not necessarily be, the number one priority. It's like, that's a huge factor in everything that you're going to do. It's the foundation.
I want to share, keeping with this coffee theme, especially for acquisitions, the demographics. If you want to do clear aligners, fancy coffees, and everyone's a black coffee person at that practice, it doesn't happen overnight. So you can work with people like Shane to focus on that and bring in other patients. But especially with acquisitions, is the dentistry being done in that practice, A, the dentistry you can do, and B, the dentistry that you want to do? Because if you buy a practice with an older patient base, like you said, Stephen, and you think you're going to do veneers and clear aligners, that may be a morale and money problem. You say, hey, I'm going to do fundamental restorative dentistry. As I build up this other side of my practice, I'm going to hire someone like Shane to go out there into the internet world and bring me those patients. But I think the demographic piece for both startups and acquisitions is such a huge, important, and sometimes over. And the ratio part is, people say, Stephen, this is 1 to 2,000 population. I should be a dentist there. And I said, that's, not enough information for you to make the biggest decision of your entire career. Right.
That's right.
So, just like a Seinfeld joke, you can't return a practice out of spite. Remember the jacket one? You can't return it out of spite. Once you got it, it's yours.
That's right.
Let's kind of finish up a little bit with this F part, and really think of it in funding. And Shane, you're welcome to share about what most people spend on marketing. But Stephen, first, you tell us about the funding piece of startups in general. Someone just walked in and said, Stephen Trutter, how many startups have you guys opened?
I've been a part of over 800 in my career.
800, and they needed money for every one, right? No one had did you get a free one along the way? Did someone say, hey, we gifted this person a startup?
Nope, not yet.
No. So each time, money, very important, makes things happen, as they say. So you're a dentist, you're an associate saying, I want to get my startup funded. Just give us some best practices, thought process, principles of funding for a startup.
Yeah, I think when it comes to startups or in acquisitions, you're, especially for the younger audience that's listening, for those that are like, I'm an associate, what do I need to be doing today is aligning your repayment structure of your student loans in alignment with your future plans. What do I mean by that? Get yourself into any kind of IBR or repay type of options and stay there. Because if your goal is to be a practice owner, I'm not talking about just startup, but a practice owner in the next couple of years, don't refinance your loans to get a lower interest rate. If that means you refinance out of IBR, because it's kind of like a gang, but kind of a nice gang. Once you're kicked out of IBR, it's going to be really hard to get back in, and sometimes it's impossible. So once you refinance out of that, guess what? Your payment went from $1,000 or $1,500 a month to $4,000 a month. Now you may be in a position to not actually afford the practice you want to purchase or the practice you want to start. So so we're not talking about the amount of student loans. It's how much do you need a service on a monthly basis? So can I get somebody that's got $500,000 in student loans funding? Yes. Could I have a challenge to somebody who has $100,000? Maybe, because if the payments are way vastly different and they got to service more debt, then we have a challenge. So it's about making sure you have the lowest possible payment and stay there.
I like that a lot, Stephen.
Your ownership is your fastest path of paying off student loan debt.
Yeah, and that sometimes it goes against what you think in your mind of paying off debt as quickly as possible. It can be dangerous. We have our Nacho transitions director, Brandon, watching in, who does a lot of acquisitions. He's going to come on at the end, like the old school WWF from the Saturday mornings and body slam startups at the end. But, he can put his favorite wrestler in the chat. I'm sure he has one from back in the day. Mine was the Junkyard Dog. That was my favorite wrestler, the Junkyard Dog. But what's key in any of this is pay attention to bank financing for startup or acquisitions. I cannot tell you how many times someone says, Paul, I've decided what cabinets I'm going to put in my acquisition. I go, which bank are they using? I go, haven't met one yet. I go, you're going way out of order in the decisions here. Cabinets, easy anytime. Someone giving you $723,000. It's harder than people think. While banks have a tremendous confidence in dentists, it's not a fill out this paper, get 800,000, fill out this paper, get 500,000. Shane, how about on your end, funding marketing, whether it's an acquisition or a startup? What should people be thinking about how they're going to pay your marketing firm to do this?
Yeah. And first thing I want to say is I don't think people think enough of how much goes into an acquisition or a startup. If you can find somebody to guide you through that, oh my gosh, it's going to make the process, because I've seen people do it themselves and then go back and say, I should have never done all of this myself. Right. It was way too much. And, so that's one thing is just don't hesitate to ask for help for people who do this. But from the marketing side of it, I want to say that we like to kind of backtrack. So we like to ask, what are your goals for this first year. How much revenue, how much production are you wanting to do? Are you fee for service? Are you in network? What does that look like? And then let's break down how many new patients you would like to see per month. And from that formula, we can, based on their area and location, kind of determine what they're going to need to spend in advertising and marketing. But what I always tell anybody who's acquiring or doing a startup is you're going to want to be more aggressive at the beginning, especially. So you may spend 10 or 12% of your total projected, revenue back into the marketing side of it those first few years, because you're in total growth mode.
Yeah.
Once your marketing starts bringing in patients, those patients can start referring and start this flywheel effect of growing the practice, but you got to get patients in the door right from the get-go. So that's where I see a lot of dentists in Facebook groups things saying, well, I ran some ads on Google and Facebook. I spent like $300. It's like, that's probably not going to get it done if you're really wanting to grow the practice. So think of in those terms, work backwards from what your goal is, and then work with somebody who can help you break that down on how much you would need to spend.
Yep.
Awesome value. I'm going to ask you guys, we're going to have our fun wrap up here, and just I'm going to give you guys each a minute. Did I miss anything, Stephen? And how can people reach out to you? 60 seconds closing thoughts here on our sitcom length startups versus acquisition show.
You can reach us at idealpractices.com. And what I would say is this: whether you're taking the leap into a startup or a leap into an acquisition, know before you take the leap and do the research on things like where are you at from a funding perspective, prioritize the elements that you need to have in terms of your funding, and making sure that it's the right location, and that location applies whether it's a startup or an acquisition. The acquisitions and startups aren't that dissimilar in the approach and the research you need to do. They're really not that much dissimilar.
Awesome. Great value there, Stephen. Here, we have one final guest here at the end, watching the end. Shane, yours is going to be this age once too. What is your final thoughts here for the Nacho audience?
Yeah, definitely. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have questions about marketing your practice, whether you should acquire, whether you should do a startup, what are the things you should look for? Like I said, we have 3 people here who can help guide you in that decision. And if you're looking for help or advice on the marketing side of things, you can always reach our company at crimsonmediagroup.com. We're happy to jump on a call and even just look and see what you've got going on and make some suggestions from that point.
Awesome, guys. Well, I want to say guac gratitude. That's the highest level of thanks and gratitude for supporting our community as sponsors. We couldn't do what we do without you. And if you want to reach out to us, text startup to 215-543-6454. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.